Welcome to The Explainer. In today's world, the old rule books for leadership, they're just not cutting it anymore. It's not enough to just manage people and projects. The real challenge, the new imperative, is to inspire. So in this Explainer, we're going to open up a new playbook, a strategic toolkit filled with skills for leaders who really need to make an impact.
And this quote right here, it gets to the very heart of it all. What's the real difference between a good manager and a truly great leader? It all comes down to one thing: connection. We're talking about the difference between just passing on information and actually having influence. Forging those bonds that don't just tell people what to do, but make them want to do it. Let's keep that idea in mind as we go.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about why these leadership skills are so incredibly important right now. Then, we're going to dive into 3 key dimensions of mastery. We'll start with Dimension 1, your inner game. Then we'll move to Dimension 2, mastering influence. And third, we'll get into the team dynamic. And to wrap it all up, we'll think about the kind of leadership legacy you actually want to leave behind.
So, let's start with the big why. Why are we focusing so much on these skills, and why is it so urgent right now? Well, it's because the whole world of work has fundamentally changed. Hierarchies are getting flatter, news and information travel in an instant, and let's be honest, people expect a lot more from their jobs than just a paycheck. That old school, top-down leadership style, it's not just outdated, it's a liability.
And listen, this isn't just a gut feeling. The data absolutely backs this up. The World Economic Forum points to leadership as one of the most critical skills needed to get by in today's workplace. So what does that mean for you? It means that being a great leader isn't just a nice little bonus on your resume anymore. It's a core requirement for success, for you and for your entire organization.
Okay, Dimension 1. This is where it all begins, because let's face it, before you can even hope to lead anyone else, you have got to be able to lead yourself. This is the foundation, the inner work of self-awareness and self-management that everything else is built on.
And this dimension really comes down to 3 things. First, it's about building up your emotional intelligence so you can really understand the human side of things. Second, it's about making a huge shift from managing your time, which you can't control, to managing your attention, which you can. And third, it's about learning how to set goals that are just scary enough to be exciting. So let's talk about that shift from time to attention, because it's so important. You can't get more hours in the day, but you can control where your focus goes. The real goal is to get rid of what you might call empty calorie time. You know what I'm talking about, those hours where you're technically busy, but you're not actually moving the needle on anything that matters. Great leaders are absolutely ruthless about protecting their attention.
So how ambitious should you get with those goals? Well, the research points to a real sweet spot. Peak performance happens when you're only about 60 to 70% sure you can actually hit the goal. Think about it. If you're 100% sure you can do it, you're probably not pushing yourself. That little feeling of, whoa, can I do this? That's not a bad sign. It's a signal that you're in the growth zone.
So, once you start getting a handle on your inner game, you've got the foundation you need to lead other people effectively. And that brings us right into our second dimension: mastering influence. This is all about how you take that self-awareness and turn it into real-world impact. The ability to connect with people, to persuade them, and to inspire them to act.
Now here's something that might surprise you. A lot of us think leadership is all about having the best data and winning arguments with pure logic. But the research tells a completely different story. The most effective leaders, they appeal to emotion and intuition almost 3 times more often than they appeal to logic. The takeaway here is huge. If you really want to influence someone, you've got to connect with their heart, not just their head.
And of course, influence isn't just about the words you use. It's about your presence. Powerful leaders get this. They master their nonverbal cues. They use stillness, calm, deliberate movements that project confidence. They're intentional with their smile. Smiling all the time can actually signal a need for approval. And they always initiate the handshake. It's a subtle way of taking control of the interaction right from the start.
Now check this out. Here's a really powerful psychological tool for getting people on board. It's called the small yes strategy. In a famous study, researchers went door to door and asked people to do something tiny. Just put a small "drive carefully" sign in their window. Easy, right? Most people said yes. But then, a few weeks later, they went back to those same houses with a much, much bigger request.
And the results were just incredible. 76% of the people who agreed to that tiny sign also agreed to put a huge, ugly sign on their front lawn. Why? Because that first small yes had already changed how they saw themselves. They started thinking, hey, I'm the kind of person who cares about my community.
So when the second request came, saying no would have felt inconsistent. As a leader, this is gold. Getting small agreements early on paves the way for commitment to much bigger things down the road.
The best leaders also know that asking great questions is way more powerful than just having all the answers. Take this question, for example. It cuts right through all the standard, rehearsed interview answers. It's designed to see if someone has humility, if they can learn, and if they can grow. How they answer tells you everything about their ability to evolve, which is a massive indicator of leadership potential.
All right, so we've covered mastering yourself and influencing individuals. Now it's time to scale up. Let's talk about the team. Dimension 3 is all about creating an entire environment, a culture, where everyone can do their best work and really perform at a high level.
And a huge part of this is understanding something called the Pygmalion Effect. It's this powerful psychological idea that the expectations you have for your team directly shape how they perform. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you genuinely believe in your people and you show them you have high expectations, they almost always rise to the occasion. Your belief literally becomes their reality.
This is also where we see the massive difference between simply delegating and truly empowering someone. Delegation is just about handing off a task. It's saying, do this. But empowerment, that's about giving someone ownership. It's saying, own this. It turns a simple task into a chance for them to grow and develop their career, which is what really motivates people.
You can't innovate if you don't take risks. And if you take risks, sometimes you're going to fail. It's inevitable. The single most important factor in creating a culture of innovation is how you, as a leader, react when that happens. If you treat failures like data points, valuable lessons, instead of something to be punished, you create a space where people feel safe enough to take the smart risks that lead to breakthroughs.
At the end of the day, all of this, all high-performing teams are built on a foundation of unbreakable trust. And that trust comes from a few key things. It comes from leading with absolute integrity, from being transparent, especially when things get tough, and from being willing to embrace vulnerability. Showing your team that you're human doesn't make you weak. It makes you real, and it builds connections that last.
So, we've walked through the 3 dimensions of modern leadership: mastering your inner game, mastering your influence, and mastering the team dynamic. Now let's bring it all home and think about what this is all for, the impact you have, and the story that you ultimately leave behind.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe the most powerful question of all. After you've moved on, when your team members are talking about their time working with you, what story are they going to tell? Because that story, well, that's your legacy.